baby.
This mic seems extremely loud now compared to where it was. I feel like I need to talk quieter.
Oh, no, we're live now. By the way, we're live.
Are we live? Is the chat room up? Is this happening? Where are we? 3. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Cliff.
Hello.
How are you?
Hey, hello.
Oh,
hello.
is this
Wait.
thing on?
What's happening? What's going on here? Hello, everybody. If I didn't know better, I'd say this was theonering.net. Welcome, everybody, to Torn Tuesday.
Wait, it's not the OneRing.net?
If I didn't know
I'm in the
be-
wrong place.
If I didn't know better, this is where we're going to actually talk to you about Amazon Studios. Oh, light change. We're going to talk about Amazon Studios.
Interesting.
Exciting news, lots of exciting news for
Big
their
news.
Lord of the Rings Middle-earth TV series, but not without talking quite a bit about Game of Thrones at the same time. Welcome, everybody. This is the show for theonering.net. Right here is the extraordinarily talented and very smart Chelsea Schwartz.
Aw, thank you.
And right over here is...
The ever fabulous and all-knowing Clifford Broadway.
Da, da, da. Hey, guys. You can follow us online at theonering.net, at theonering.net, without a dot, at all of our social media streams. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, The One Ring Net. Hey, guess what? You're live. This is live, and I can see all these wonderful people have joined us.
Yes.
Welcome to
Thanks
The One
for saying
Ring.net.
hi in the chat room, everybody. And please continue to talk with us. We can see you. We want to hear from you for the next 90 minutes.
Hey, yes, for the next... really, are we going to do 60 or 90 minutes?
We're somewhere in between.
Let's keep going. Let's keep pushing the limits.
I think we're gonna stay on for the next 4.5 days straight, is what I heard.
I've got lots to talk about for 4.5 days. I have lots to talk about. Justin, our producer and sometimes co-host, is hiding right behind the little emerald curtain. He's pushing buttons and pulling levers and making green smoke appear behind my throne. So pay no attention to him, please. Please pay him no mind. Welcome. Nice to see you.
You as well.
Lovely to see everybody here. Nice to see the whole gang
And I
of
want to thank everybody
fans.
that joined us last week. We didn't get a chance to say thank you and so long, and thank you for being part of the show last week. We had so much fun talking to Dome.
Yeah. Yes. Last week with Dome Korakowski, the director of Tolkien, the movie from Fox Searchlight. Do you know what? My mom went to go see it this weekend. My mom was like, I promise you, even though I'm over here in sleepy little Florida, I'm going to take my girlfriends from the club. We're going to go get together and do a Sunday matinee. So before Game of Thrones had its big finale on Sunday, my mom was texting me from the theater saying, oh my gosh, I love this movie. This movie. She's filling my text messages with hearts and kisses saying, oh my God, this Tolkien movie is so beautiful. And then she went home and was, devastated and cried all night from the Game of Thrones. So my mom was like doing a lot of crying on Sunday. And you know what? That's the news. That's the news. I'm just so glad that my mom...
That's it? That's all the news? So we're done?
Well, no. That's it. Good night, everybody. That's the
Good night,
show.
Gracie.
Good night, Gracie. No, but I'm actually proud of my mom because she had to drive halfway across town from Edgewater all the way up to Daytona Beach and found a theater where they had a really nice 2 o'clock matinee. And her friend, who's a hardcore Tolkien fan, they loved the Tolkien biography film. And they really enjoyed it. And that's super cool. So, I did my part. I'm pushing my friends to go and see the film. But today, aside from, the afterglow, I'm really, I give full credit. Chelsea gets all the credit because she helped arrange that wonderful interview we had with Dome Korakowski, and we covered a lot of ground in 1 hour.
We did. We got as far as we could possibly get. And,
Yeah.
and we even chased Dome out the door with one final question that we were both very excited about, too.
I was like still talking to him about subtext in the movie when we were out there on the sidewalk in front of Scum and Villainy. So, hey, everybody. This is Scum and Villainy, the absolute nexus of all geekdom here in Hollywood, the coolest place on Hollywood Boulevard. Come and join us live here on any Tuesday. Mr. Kevin Smith will be gathering an audience here.
Right after us.
Right after we're done.
Today, in this exact spot. Kevin's going to be where I'm standing right now.
And we have breaking news. We have...
What?
What? Do we? Should we?
Absolutely.
All right.
We got to tell him.
Should we break the news, guys?
Yes.
Okay. Chelsea and I are very glad to tell you all the news. Yes. Can we talk Game of Thrones spoilers now? Yeah, we can talk Game of Thrones spoilers. But
we
there's
can
an
talk
even bigger,
spoilers for whatever you would like.
There's a bigger Game of Thrones surprise for all the J.R.R. Tolkien fans who are wondering what's going on over there at Amazon Studios.
Yeah, so as we all know, Amazon Studios has a Lord of the Rings series in the works, and we have guesses. Is it young Aragorn? Is it the Second Age? Is it the Second Age leading through the story of young Aragorn? We don't know. But we did learn something.
A couple of weeks ago, the woman who was the head of development for genre shows, and that means keep up with me now, fantasy, sci-fi, westerns, genre, like any genre, okay, show. And her name was Igardo. Yeah, Tal, lovely woman, Tal Igardo. And she left. I may be pronouncing her name wrong. It might be Iguardo. But guess what?
We're sorry if we butchered your name.
She left the show. And that means Amazon Studios needed to bring someone in to help them lead the show for their Arda Middle-earth efforts.
Which the woman that left Amazon wasn't leading Lord of the Rings. It might have been on her plate of things that were handled by her.
Yes.
But now the person that is now being brought in to consult on this show is...
None other than Bryan
Cogman.
Bryan Cogman, who is the third head of the dragon from Game of Thrones.
Which means that he's the writer that falls right after David and DB.
Yes. Yeah, who are the showrunners?
Everybody wants to blame David and DB for everything in Game of Thrones, and hey, now they're going to go and run Star Wars. So there's that. But
yeah, there's that part of the conversation.
But then there's Bryan, and Bryan's responsible for moments like Brienne becoming a lady knight. And
Brienne of Tarth.
Of Tarth. And on top of that, one of his main jobs was to make sure that the Game of Thrones series honored the books. He needed to know those books inside and out, and George trusted him more than anybody else.
Yes.
Like, he's got full recognition from George R.R. Martin himself. And now...
That's why he held that position for so long at HBO, was because George Martin
heralded him.
Trusted him. Bryan Cogman was called by other castmates the walking encyclopedia. In fact, one of the directors of Game of Thrones thought mistakenly that Bryan Cogman was one of the lead producers because of the amount of powerful knowledge and authority that he executed over the scripts, the storylines, the way that Game of Thrones was being constructed and reconstructed from the books. And this guy, Bryan Cogman, is now over at Amazon Studios.
So he's going to be in charge of our books now and making sure that our books are honored.
He's in charge.
I think that's great. He obviously has the ability to retain that encyclopedia-like information. On top of that, Bryan's done a couple of other cool adaptations that also need to honor original context. So he created a game, not a game, but a new film based off of Magic the Gathering, the card game, that is being produced by Sony or Fox, one of the two.
I'm such a big fan of Magic the Gathering, and I've been waiting. Can I be honest? Can I date myself? I've been waiting since 1995 for somebody to pick up Magic the Gathering as an intellectual property and make a wildly cool show or movie out of it.
And now Bryan's written it.
And Bryan's written it. He's the guy.
And then on top of that,
invite him to game night, please.
Absolutely.
Please invite him to game night. I want to play games with this guy.
And then on top of that, Bryan has also penned the upcoming Sword in the Stone live-action remake that will be available exclusively on Disney Plus coming November 12th when the service launches. That's Disney's streaming service. So you know how Disney's taking every animation and turning it into a live-action. Sword in the Stone was one of my favorites. I was telling you before the show, Archimedes is one of my favorite characters.
Archimedes is the best.
Archimedes is great.
My favorite line from Merlin is, "See here, Sugar Bowl, you're getting too rough. Poor old tea-set's cracked enough. Hoo-hoo! Oh, yes. Game of Thrones.
And
I'm sorry.
so now he's going to be also in charge of taking this animation story that we all love and turning it into this live action as well, which the live actions have been turning out great. I like, there hasn't really been one that I've hated. Obviously, Dumbo was my least favorite of all of them, but I didn't care for Dumbo as an animation, so that's probably why. I was like, so...
Dumbo was redeemed by a really, really good change at the end. The very big ending, something that should have been done in that animated film all those decades ago.
And they left out a lot of the controversial racist type things, like the Jim Crows and stuff like that.
The Crows, like, I done seen about everything when I seen an elephant fly.
And then...
I remember that.
Also, for me, I was terrified going into Dumbo because Tim Burton is creepy in a lot of the things he's done in a way that makes me uncomfortable. And Dumbo terrified me as a kid. That pink elephant scene scarred me for life.
Yeah.
And so I went, great, now we're going to have Tim Burton doing the pink elephant scene. Yeah. He actually made that quite beautiful. It was a beautiful scene.
Yes, and it was very different.
I'm glad I saw Dumbo. I don't ever need to see it again. That's my point. It's my least favorite. But the point is that these live actions remakes have been great. Disney takes their time in picking the right people. So and Disney puts their vote behind him. George is behind this guy. And now he's looking after our books. I don't know. I'm excited. I am behind this.
I'm excited too because Bryan Cogman should be recognized as our kind of nerd. Y'all with me on that? He has taken his fierce passion for the books of Martin's Song of Ice and Fire and his fierce fandom for games and the approach that Disney took to fantasy with the Arthurian legend, and now he's approaching Amazon's biggest and costliest intellectual property, the Middle-earth series, the Lord of the Rings series, LOTR on Prime. Let's go. This is happening. Do you know what I have? I have something to say. Okay, it was a year ago that I broke the news on this live show and on the OneRing.net that young Aragorn was going to be the first approach for the opening season of Amazon's series. But that was a year ago. Things change. Things have changed. The person that I just mentioned, who is the head of genre development, has left. From the whispers that we're hearing, Varys, the master of whispers, came to me with his little information, his little kids, and said, you know what? Here's the whispers we're hearing from around Westeros, okay? There is a big, complex contract with the Tolkien estate. And the Tolkien estate is in bed with Amazon as part of this production. In other words, they can't make the production without the approval of the estate. And do you know what I've been hearing lately? That even though originally the approach was going to be young Aragorn, now different things, different people have come to the table, and it's the Second Age and the forging of the Rings of Power that's most likely going to be, the new opening. And who's behind that? Who's behind that, do you suppose? Maybe it's Bryan. Maybe it's our buddy. Maybe it's our buddy Bryan.
Bryan was also very interested in pitching a First Age Westeros series that did not get greenlit.
Tell me about that.
Tell me about that. This was part of George R.R. Martin, much like Tolkien, created a world, and he started with a map, and the map allowed him to create histories.
Yes.
So the context of what we have in Thrones is one part of the history, just like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit is one part of our Middle-earth history. So he already had an older story he wanted to tell, so he's loving these First and Second Age stories. So they magically brought him in at a time that there's a changing of the guard at Amazon, and the people that were interested in young Aragorn are no longer at play, but they're loving the Second Age idea, and even the Tolkien estate seems to be in it.
Very much. So for all those people who are saying, oh, Clifford, you were wrong. Oh, the OneRing.net, you were wrong in saying it was young Aragorn. Well, we were right for a time. But that's what we do. We're a fan website. And as Justin appropriately reminded me before we began the show, we bring the news to you as we hear it. No filters, No, no weird.
And
oh my
sometimes it's a
gosh.
rumor mill, but sometimes we like playing with the rumors. Sometimes
Yeah.
we have legitimate sources behind them. But even when something is accurate one day, it doesn't mean it can't be changed the next day.
Yes, indeed. And by the way, there are 5 maps on their interactive map website,
5 seasons.
and one of them is still blank.
Ooh.
One of them is still blank, which might fulfill the final category. We might end up getting to young Aragorn in later seasons. But here's the guy, Bryan Cogman, who was implicitly and explicitly trusted by George R.R. Martin to keep in the lane, to keep them steering the HBO series in the proper driving lane. And when he wrote his first scripted episode, it was given over to George Martin for approval, and his note was, an excellent episode, straight from my books.
Yep.
So if you want someone who's like deep into the books of Tolkien,
Or
and who's
or
gonna-
just a deep nerd like
yeah,
all of
deep
us.
nerd, and has that passion, then this is where we're headed. This is all very good news for all of us. Let's look at the live chat.
So there's been a lot of great comments that passed. Somebody
Oh,
was
yes.
asking, and this is for you, Cliff, if you've seen the images of the new Dark Crystal series.
Yes, I have seen the new Dark Crystal images. I've got nothing else to say except yes.
If you can't tell, your video might be
yes,
blurry or
yes,
shaking
yes,
right now.
yes,
Cliff
yes,
is jumping up and down,
yes,
bouncing
yes.
into
oh
the wells.
Oh my God, absolutely, oh my gosh. Whoa, wait a minute. Breathe.
I knew I had to point that chat. I read the chat while
why they-
Cliff is often on rants, and I save these moments so we can get reactions like this. Because
That's why they call me Spaz back in high school. So if any of my friends from high school
you
are
just had
watching,
a moment like when they announced
now
the
you know why I'm a Spaz. Oh my God! Somebody would say the Dark Crystal around me when I was just a teenager, and I would do this exact same thing. Like, oh my God, where? It's the best. This is going to be amazing. Those are mind-blowing images from the new Dark Crystal series. I'm about to fall over. Like, oh my God, I'm
Cliff's
just about to
literally
fall over.
having the reaction back in September that I
Okay.
had when Justin announced that Loki was getting his own series.
Loki!
Remember?
yes.
So we've now gotten the
Yes.
fanboy moment out of Cliff. It's great.
Yes, that's my moment. Sorry,
if
I
you,
had
if you
to
don't
do it.
know, Cliff, Dark Crystal is one of his favorites of all time. So
It's the best.
he's
all right?
very excited
Like,
about Dark Crystal.
Here it is. You know, my nerddom, it starts with Tolkien, Miyazaki, and Jim Henson. That's my ultimate nerddom. I'm happy forever in that world. In those worlds. I'm so
Cliff,
happy.
read the whole chat. It's all Cliff is fanboying. Cliff is excited about something Dark Crystal related.
Yes, Cliff is fanboying. Okay. All right. What we have here in the chat are lots and lots of great comments. What is this? Is this Rafi?
That's what it looks like. I can
Yes.
barely read the name from here.
Let's see. It says, I'm really excited that the Tolkien estate is actively involved in this series, the series at Amazon.
Yes.
And I cannot be happier that the series is set in the Second Age. And we are investing into the deep lore, as the Silmarillion is my favorite work of Tolkien. Bryan Cogman, working on the show, is the happiest news I have heard for this. I'm visibly and audibly geeking out in the bus.
So you see, we've made somebody spaz at home while you made Cliff spaz here on the show. It's great. This is what we do here at the One Ring Net.
The next thing we need is Bryan Cogman to come on our show here next week, live, not Memorex.
Maybe not next
Live.
week, but soon. We will get it, Brian, as soon as we can.
I'm down for next week. Let's just talk
I'm
about
going to imagine that Brian's under some sort of contract where he's not going to be allowed to say much at this point. So he'll just be on the show staring blankly in silence.
non-disclosure agreement, my butt. You can tell us everything, Brian. Tell us everything about it.
So also somebody else in the chat room when we were talking about Sword in the Stone, I wanted to acknowledge you quoted Archimedes when Merlin calls him sensitive and he goes, who? What? Just like it is deeply insulting. Yes, everybody out there that also loves Archimedes as much as me, I love you, and I wanted to say
After
that.
today, Bryan Cogman cannot be in the same room that we are.
What's that?
After today, Bryan can't be in the same room we are.
That's probably true. We'll probably never get an interview with him until after the show is already out on the air.
Oh, we'll find a way.
Okay. Yes, but our friend in the chat, on Facebook chat, continues by saying George R.R. Martin's innate trust in Cogman only solidifies the fact that Cogman has the right passion and vision for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree. And well said, friend on Facebook.
I'm curious what Bryan's history, what does this say here? I'm
Tolkien.
curious what Bryan's history with Tolkien is
prior to this job. I'd be very curious. See, those are the kinds of questions we could ask Bryan. Bryan could come on the show and we could ask him about his background if he was a Tolkien fan and stuff of that nature. Yes, another amazing, beautiful piece of fantasy. Very excited about Dark Crystal. Yeah, see, people are just as excited as you.
Oh, okay.
Go all the way down.
All the way down?
No, down.
Oh,
down,
this
down.
way. I'm going up this way.
Let's see the new chats.
Okay, let's see. Yes. If Bryan Cogman had any hand in season 8, Lord of the Rings is in trouble.
He did the best episodes of season 8.
Which is the part where Brienne of Tarth got knighted, and everyone cried, and it was beautiful. That was before the Battle of Winterfell, right?
What is this link, Justin, that somebody just put in the chat?
I don't know.
Multi-million-pound Lord of the Rings film in Leith docks set to open this year.
Oh, that's The Scotsman. Actually, that is not confirmed, but there's still lots and lots of rumors going on about them
Juicy.
Potentially filming in Scotland or doing some location scouting in Scotland. So they're looking around, but there's no confirmation about that yet.
Let me ask you this. Now that we've gone through the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones, and you know the fidelity...
That's the voice of Justin, by the way.
You know the fidelity
Voice of God.
issues that fans have between where the books and the show departed.
The fidelity conversation only came up because fans recognized that the show had progressed so much further than George Martin's existing books.
So is it important to have someone that's been on the front line and knows where fans are coming from?
I actually have a better point for that question than where you're going. So here's something that a lot of people may not have caught that we got wind of while getting to meet George in the last couple of weeks, is that I heard George say that he very much hoped the Game of Thrones ending would be like the Scouring of the Shire.
Yes.
And I have to say, watching that finale, it was exactly that. And I couldn't have been happier, and I know George couldn't have been happier, to the point that when Arya and Jon have that emotional goodbye, and she's like, I'm off on an adventure to who knows where with the elves.
That was
okay,
so
she didn't say
Grey
elves.
Havens.
But it was definitely the Grey Havens, and it was our Baggins setting off, and I started to cry.
Yes.
I felt like I was watching Return of the King again, and was like, this is the end, and it was...
Cliff,
it was
why did they
good.
cut the Scouring of the Shire from the movies, The Lord of the Rings?
Say again?
Why did they cut the Scouring of the Shire out of Lord of the Rings? A critical point that Tolkien was making at the end of the books.
Fran and Philippa, working with Peter Jackson, the screenwriters of The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, the Oscar-winning screenwriters of The Return of the King, thank you, they were interested in doing as much justice as they could to Tolkien's book, but the scouring of the Shire scene didn't happen because in terms of cinema, it felt like it would have been another extended anticlimactic ending, which is ironic because they ended up having 6 or 7 fade to white, another ending, and then fade to black, and then another ending.
Were you like me when watching Return of the King, and every time it had the fade, you had a small heart attack that it was all over, and then more came up, and you were like, oh, it's not done yet.
Yeah, me too. But in particular, they had a plan for Saruman's demise, which was written and established to be part of the Two Towers, but later on in editing the second and third film, they figured out that they would not use that ending, and that was a different ending involving the spiked wheel, which we now know happens in the extended version of Return of the King. So, no scouring of the Shire. However, the end of the Game of Thrones series finale, was written large with the Grey Havens all over it. All over
but
it.
should the movies have included Scouring the Shire because it sent a message that Tolkien purposefully put in his books?
Of course. And do you know what that message was? The message was that the isolationism that the hobbits were practicing in, ignoring the outside world, something we see Thranduil in the Hobbit films is quite guilty of, isolationism. And Tauriel says, but what about the rest of them? What if the evil comes here to our lands? And Thranduil is just like, well, no, I'm not going to pay any attention to the troubles of the outside world. And in Tolkien's mind, the Scouring of the Shire chapter resolves a big dilemma that the hobbits have had their head in the sand for so long that they wouldn't be aware that evil would come right up to their doorstep. And Tolkien wanted to prove the point, a very effective point. If you're not cautious, if you're not aware, as Mad Eye Moody would say, constant vigilance. If you don't have the vigilance, then evil will cross into your peace, and your peace will be interrupted and disrupted by evil. And so the hobbits have to face it down in the book. So that's why it was so important.
So somebody in the chat room, Ryan, just posted, I didn't see that Stephen King defended season 8 of Game of Thrones, and this is what Stephen King said. I've loved this last season of Game of Thrones, including Dany going bug shit all over King's Landing. There's been a lot of negativity about the wind-up, but I think it's just because people don't want any ending. But you know what they say, all good things, ...
All good things.
And I agree. I was like, I think people just didn't want an ending. I heard a lot of people... I actually ended up watching the finale with somebody who had never seen an episode of Game of Thrones before. And then when it was over, they were like, so really, there's no more? And like people just didn't understand that like we were already ahead of the books and what was coming. And yes, we're going to get prequels and stuff out of it. Also, they set up that finale for like 3 beautiful spin-offs at least if they wanted to.
Oh, yes.
We can have an Arya, Queen of the Uncharted Seas spin-off. We could have Jon Snow, King Beyond the Wall as a spin-off.
Yes, absolutely. In the YouTube chat, Andrew says, I'm personally optimistic, though Bryan Cogman doesn't seem to have a lot of credits beyond Game of Thrones. That's true. No one that we know is on the writing team, short as that list is, seems to have much experience. Okay, intriguing to note that Bryan Cogman, hired by David Benioff and D.B. Weiss to work on HBO series, he was only hired as an assistant. He had never written. He was a Juilliard-trained actor. He's an actor.
Who trained with Lee Pace.
Yes.
And Anthony Mackie. Anthony Mackie being Falcon in Marvel.
At Juilliard.
Yeah.
He is an actor, but then
And
he wrote
then
his
he
first
came
script.
to LA and we watched all of his friends get success and he didn't know what to do and he was in need of a job and he got recommended to be somebody's personal assistant, an executive assistant at NBC, and then nearly wrecked the guy's car like 2 days later. But the guy said, you're driving not so good, but I like hanging out with you, and got him a job as a writer's assistant at some random show at that time.
Yeah.
That ended up then leading to him being pulled in as the coffee boy for David and DB.
The coffee boy for D&D.
Yep.
That's what fans of Game of Thrones call them in shorthand.
Yep.
Benioff and Weiss.
And he worked his way up from there. I was like, at the end of it, if you read his story, he is a true nerd. I was like, and since the entire cast of Game of Thrones referred to him as a walking encyclopedia of knowledge about this series, I fully feel that same spirit will be taken into his, whatever the role is, whatever they decide to cover for Tolkien, whatever book they're going to go off of, whatever story it is, he's going to dissect it forwards and backwards, and he's going to know it, and we're going to get the best possible version. Now, I've seen a couple of people in the chat be worried about D&D coming and getting their hands on this. They've got their hands full with the prequel and with Star Wars.
Yeah.
They're not coming to Lord of the Rings. We're not going to get David and DB over here. It's just Bryan. And I've got high hopes for Bryan. I think that'll be great. Also, what did somebody, you scrolled up, but somebody commented about...
Tolkien fans need to defend the material more, because if the Game of Thrones creators get their hands on it, they're going to... Oh, thank you, that's right, they're going to mess it up however they like. And then Joseph continues to say, and the fact that Torn and others are defending it is unreal. Is it? Joseph,
okay.
What is unreal?
Wait, no, I've got
about this. You start. I'll finish.
I'm currently in therapy, so I'm going to go off on this in a different place. This is a fan show. All of us are entitled to our own opinions, and there's no reason to say that anybody's opinion is unreal. That's invalidating. I was like, and personally, I'm not invalidated by this statement, but other people could be, and there's no need for that. If you didn't like the ending, if you don't believe in Bryan, that's okay. that's awesome. I was like, I want everyone to be passionate and stuff about it. I was like, but there's no reason to say that it's unreal that we're defending it. This is how we feel. This is from our research and our educational standpoint on this. I was like, I think Bryan will do a good job with this material.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and the idea that Tolkien fans need to defend the original material, we always do. We always do. And I'd like to state that for 20 years, I have always defended the original material, and I've always gone back to my original research with Tolkien's letters, his biography, the abundant scholarship that is available to us as Tolkien fans. I've always defended the material. What we don't know...
And you're absolutely allowed to defend the material. And
yeah,
if
I
I don't want to defend the material, I'm allowed to do that, or whatever we want to do.
I'm not in a position, Joseph, where I'm defending this guy who's a writer for Game of Thrones above I'm defending Tolkien's original works. In fact, I wouldn't even use the verb. The verb defend is not even what I'm doing. I'm enthusing. That's all I'm doing. That's all we have right now is to enthuse about the energy and the success that someone can bring when they have deep, deep nerd credibility, and then they get involved in another deep nerd project, which is of great interest to all of us. It would be alarming, perhaps, if it was somebody else at this stage who had less of a track record, but we're examining Bryan's track record, not defending it, but examining and enthusing.
We're literally looking at all of the pieces of the puzzle.
Enthusing.
Not just Game of Thrones, but he's done other things besides
Now,
that.
Again, if it
Also, thank you to everybody that said thank you and preached Chelsea and good for you. And somebody
Yes.
also commented, Cliff's gonna blow.
I'm not going to blow. I'm happy to say that the first line of information that we're giving you is our enthusiastic first line of information.
Yeah.
We're not taking a position.
But at the end of the day, we're
position that's
fans
like-
on a fan show talking about what we love and hate, and we're all entitled to our opinion. And Joseph, if it's unreal to you, awesome. I was like, it's allowed to be unreal to you, and you can be angry and
Yeah.
make a video and talk
Yeah.
about it all
There
you
you go.
want.
It's ridiculous. Well, now he's shifting adjectives from unreal to ridiculous. Well, what's ridiculous is being on a worldwide Tolkien community web portal for 20 years and doing nothing that pays us, that puts us into a compromised position with any of the studios or the directors or anybody, because none of that has ever happened. What you're getting is just enthusiasm and early information from us. There's no compromise. And I don't take kindly to the suggestion that it's, ridiculous.
Ellen,
I mean,
that's a great statement. There's
But-
plenty of room to love Tolkien and Game of Thrones and Dark Crystal and Dragon
is.
Riders and any other great fantasy book, film, or TV show.
the
Amen.
the energy behind Bryan Cogman's career and his relative success and all of his controversies. We also examine his controversies with what he's done with helping adapt Game of Thrones. But we're in a similar position, and it is worth examining, and we encourage all of you to have an open mind and examine some of this with us. However, I want to say that our enthusiasm about all this conversation is not in any way detracting our original loyalty to Professor Tolkien's books. Amen. So, amen. Let's get an amen up in here. So, and to suggest otherwise is a spurious claim. So, okay, the purpose of this show is to geek out, and yes, we do geek out. Okay, now I'm really sorry, says Ms. Adams. I'm really sorry that so many are so unhappy with the ending of Game of Thrones. I really am so sorry we're not all still thrilled like we were in the beginning. I didn't have any major complaints with the end of Game of Thrones, except it was rushed. Like, there were only 6 episodes, and it felt like things were rushed along a little bit, but that's because these two guys, David and DB, they're going to work for Disney Lucas now.
Dave and Dan.
That's David Benioff and DB Weiss.
Dan Weiss, yeah.
Yeah. And they're
Hey, breaking news. I just got a like from Jed Brophy. Sounds like he's on board with Bryan Cogman.
Yeah, Jed Brophy.
Who's Jed Brophy? He was in every movie.
Jed Brophy has been in every Peter Jackson film since, the Heavenly Creatures movie, even before then, probably. Jed Brophy. He played Nori in the Hobbit trilogy, and a few other orcs and uglies in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. You know Jed Brophy, don't you? Yeah. Okay. No?
So some of the
okay?
episodes,
Chelsea's
some of the episodes
Oh, I was
that
told to chill in the chat room, so I'm just not going to speak for a while.
Okay.
some of the episodes that Bryan Cogman wrote are some of the fan favorites. He did episode 4 of the first season. He did Kissed by Fire, which I guess is a big fan favorite. The Laws of Gods and Men.
The Laws of Gods and Men.
That is one of the most favorite episodes. And then he did, of course, season 6, episode 1, which we discussed. But he did the absolute most well-reviewed episode of season 8. He is the one guy that's been engaged every season since before they even started filming. This guy is a nerd like us, a Fidelity nerd like us.
A Fidelity nerd. Well, this means that the stakes have gone a little higher, perhaps. Let's take the pro and con argument and say, you guys are making this up? Okay, hey there, Jeff. Yes, we have sources and references, and we are not making this up like young Aragorn. Okay, Jeff, first of all, we were correct about the young Aragorn assertion. We asserted that, and it was correct at the time.
At the time.
At the time. But a year later, the development of the show has gone in another direction.
New management,
and the Tolkien estate is in charge and guiding those decisions. So the decisions have been made. It went in a different direction. So we're going to be right and wrong again.
And
equally.
we cite our sources in our Twitter thread.
Our sources, first of all, came from George R.R. Martin
You were just at his house.
himself. I was just speaking with him at his theater in Santa Fe a couple of weeks ago when we had a special presentation of the Tolkien film. And Mr. Martin actually wrote in his blog that Bryan Cogman has gone off to work and guide, not to lead, but he used the word guide, the Tolkien project at Amazon. That story has also been picked up by Vanity Fair and another outlet is
Variety.
probably going to drop a big bomb.
Variety posted it today, Hollywood Reporter.
Variety and Hollywood Reporter posted it as well today. So there's your sources. Chelsea, speak to us, Baba.
Well, Chelsea, my question is, Joanna Robinson, who did that profile in Vanity Fair, so a lead editor of Vanity Fair tweeted at us, said, guys, he's not leading. He's consulting on. Very different.
Yeah, absolutely.
How is that different? Like, you're inputting into the show.
Well,
consulting would be almost the same situation that he had for Game of Thrones until he actually started writing episodes, where he's the person that's being paid for people to go, does this make sense? Does it follow the books? Is it contextually right? Like, do you think so-and-so would say this? It's the same type of position.
So he's doing exactly what he did on Thrones.
Exactly. He's just, if he is strictly a consultant, he's just not writing. He's consulting to make sure that we follow the books.
Do you know what? I'm kind of jelly. I always thought that would be the job I would have. I thought that
Cliff, you need a manager.
Like a consultant.
Well, maybe Bryan needs an assistant.
Bryan Cogman. Hey, let me introduce myself right here.
Can you make a cup of coffee?
My name's Clifford the Big Red Dog. How many shots of soy milk do you want in that espresso? I'm on my way to your office right now. Right now.
Amen.
Now, let's play devil's advocate. Because we do,
I like this game.
We fairly do that, okay? The stakes have now gotten a little bit higher with Amazon bringing this kind of a talented person into the fold. Now we should...
The Westfold.
We should, yes, thank you. Thank you. Do you think it's right that we should have expectations checked up a little bit now? Because he has nerd credibility? Game of Thrones success?
No.
Because he's a Fidelity nerd? Like... So the announcement about Bryan Cogman being involved, however minimally or however deeply he's involved in this show, should we raise our expectations a bit?
No.
Tell me why.
I don't think anybody should go in with expectations because then you have a place to fall.
You're right.
I think you should take this information for what it is. I was like, you're allowed to be excited about it. I was but I don't want an expectation hangover. So no, I don't want to.
True, no expectations hangover, but for some fans in our community who are thinking maybe this is not the best idea to cross-pollinate the writers of Game of Thrones into our world of Arda and Middle-earth. Devil's
It's not-
advocate.
but it's
Devil's
not.
advocate.
It's not writers with an S, and it's not even a writer at this point because he's a consultant.
Let's take a call from the fans.
Hey, let's just see. Hey there, you're calling the OneRing.net. Where are you calling from?
San Jose, California.
Oh, where in California? I think I recognize this voice.
San Jose.
Yes. Hey there. Let's turn this up a bit. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm doing pretty good.
What's your opinion of the news today?
I'm very excited about it.
Tell us why you're excited.
I think he's a good choice. I think that with Game of Thrones being the most successful show in recent years,
Yeah.
he's a good choice. And as was pointed out by Chelsea, he's only consulting. It's not like he's actually making the show. But I think it's very important when you're doing Lord of the Rings to have someone who's kind of a creative consultant,
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing with such a rich lore like they did in Game of Thrones. But I'm very excited.
Yeah.
A good addition.
Excellent. I appreciate that input. Yes, sir. If this guy has the chutzpah to bring granular detail into an adaptation of Game of Thrones, then I'm assuming he's going to do his best to bring the same granular detail to this series as well. And they need it. They'll need someone like him.
And I like what Chelsea just said, that expectation, you got to be careful with expectations. The
Yeah.
best thing to do is go in with no expectations at all. No preconceived notion. And just enjoy it for what it is.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Yeah. So I agree with you. Thank you for calling, my friend. Thanks for being on the show. All right, could you adjust my volume? Thank you, producer. Producer Justin behind the scenes with all of his knobs and levers and green smoke behind my throne. Pay no attention to him. I love that guy. So yeah, that's a great point. Maybe we should just chill out for a minute and think about what we would like to see versus what we're going to see. This is the biggest chasm between expectations, which I just mentioned. I mentioned, can we afford to raise our expectations a little bit? But I appreciate your point that we should settle down a little bit and just try to absorb what they're going to give us and see what it's like at first. If it comes down to it, remember, the Tolkien family has the power to say no and
Also,
veto
here's the other
whatever
thing.
they're doing. So
We started off talking about how this is going to be a young Aragorn series, and things change. What's to say that Bryan is no longer part of the team in 2 more months? I was like,
Right.
that's another reason to not
Right.
get excited and raise the bar. Is that
Right.
again, this is just an announcement today
Right.
that could still change before we even start filming or casting this
If he
series.
stays
Yes.
as a consultant, but if he takes the reins as a showrunner, this is his world.
If he does, which he has not done yet.
What do
We'll
you
see.
guys, are you guys comfortable with him taking on the showrunner
I mean,
of Lord of the Rings?
we've already said yes that we're behind him
Okay.
several times on this.
That's
As-
different than
well,
consulting.
let me
No,
add
no.
this in.
I'm completely okay with Bryan in whatever capacity. I was like, that's where I've come from the whole time. I'm addressing the chat room right now because they're still going off about Game of Thrones and it's literally nonstop. Everybody's upset about season 8. To set the record straight, I hated season 8 of Game of Thrones. I loved the finale. I thought it was beautifully wrapped up, but I completely checked out this season and was over it. I am not defending the writers or where they took things. I'm defending the finale. I think that was beautifully wrapped up to match what George wanted. I was like, but the battle scenes, somebody was like, come on, you can't compare the Game of Thrones battle scenes to Return of the King or Two Towers. You're right. You can't.
And you shouldn't.
Yeah. I'm not defending season 8 as being season 8 was so good, that's why we should have the full writing team from Game of Thrones on Tolkien. No. we're talking about one person of a massive team of hundreds that's coming over with an entire new team of hundreds of people yet to be hired.
Exactly.
A person that everyone seems to love. The actors, the writers, all the directors, the producers,
Everybody,
and the fans.
but apparently the fans.
There's something to be said about the relative success of Game of Thrones as an adaptation. The TV show, successful up to a certain point X, and then a drop off at point Y, which is the conventional wisdom that most people have applied. Fine. That's fine too. So what if we get our Lord of the Rings series and the first 4 seasons are outstanding, primetime Emmy winning, and then all of a sudden the last season just tapers off? Well, then it'll just be like Lost, or just be like every other show.
Hundreds of other shows.
Hundreds of other shows. But I am interested in the connecting the dots between what Bryan Cogman did with earning the trust of the directors, who didn't even know that he was just a guy writing in a room. They thought he was one of the lead producers because his knowledge of everything in Westeros was, they couldn't function on the set without him.
The thing that
if
strikes
bring
me,
that guy in with that knowledge and that nerd power to bring his perceptive powers to Arda, to Middle-earth, then I'm all for it, and I think it is a harbinger of good things.
everything we've read
we'll
about
see.
this guy,
We'll
Bryan
see.
Cogman, he has earned every minute of success
Yeah.
with hard work, a long memory, and creative juices.
Here's the thing. The failure, or the apparent failure, of season 8 might have a lot less to do with the writers at HBO than with them rushing the whole thing to finish it up so that Weiss and Benioff could go off and work for Lucas and Disney. It might have a lot more to do with contracts and legal obligations to run off and do other
And $1 million
obligations.
per episode salaries.
It probably has less to do with Bryan Cogman bringing in a bunch of bad writers to ruin Westeros at the end of the season.
I've got to share this statement. This says everything. The success of Game of Thrones overall, regardless of specific issues to season 8, is good news for all Tolkien fans, all Lord of the Rings fans, all Hobbit fans, because it means that the world is ready for more fantasy adaptations from fantastic source material. Amen.
That's a big, big, big hallelujah. Let me say, I'm going to get an amen up in here for that. Amen. Because we haven't ever had this appetite for fantasy on television. Peter Jackson and the success of his 6 films eventually led to Game of Thrones and the success of their 10+ years. And now, all of this has led up to Jeff Bezos saying, I want that intellectual property, Middle-earth, let's make it happen. Because there's an abundant marketplace for it.
Let me ask you this, Cliff. When they announced Lord of the Rings and Amazon, Amazon and Jeff Bezos said they wanted Game of Thrones. They wanted his own Game of Thrones. They wanted Amazon Prime to have their own Game of Thrones. And why did fans react so negatively to that comment? And why I feel like a lot of the reaction today stems from where are the fans coming from, and what type of fans are talking like this?
I'm not entirely sure I know what you're asking.
Why don't fans want this to be Game of Thrones?
Okay, because Game of Thrones is overstuffed with hyper-violence, sexual, predatory behaviors, and all kinds of things that Professor Tolkien, in his Catholic sensibility, purged out of his books. And he said that literally.
But isn't there that in the Silmarillion?
I have purged my books of these things.
But the Silmarillion is brutal.
The Silmarillion
Yes,
is brutal, but
it's
it
done
doesn't.
in a poetic sense, whereas all of Game of Thrones is written, whereas much as it's supposed to be fantasy and it's supposed to be thousands of years that don't exist in our current timeline, everybody feels like it's modern day. Game of Thrones got ridiculed for so much, including like rape scenes with the Dothraki, and people being like, I can't believe somebody would write this into a show in 2019. This isn't about the current climate in 2019. It's about a fantasy. But the Silmarillion, as much as there's battle and intensity, was not written with that much colorful flavor.
Well, let me ask you this.
Look, in Middle Earth, there are no castrations or, incest.
Eunuchs.
Except, I mean, not
There
knowingly,
was
not
in
knowingly,
in Numenor.
not knowingly, and there, I mean, there's human sacrifice in Numenor.
They don't visit brothels daily.
There's incest in Numenor.
There's not knowingly. There's all right. Look. Okay.
Like I said, colorful flavor is the difference.
There's no disemboweling and rape scenes in Middle Earth. That's why anybody would naturally have a concern. I don't want the aggressive tone of Game of Thrones to be an unnecessarily aggressive approach to storytelling in Middle Earth.
But Battle of
Because
Five
that is
Armies was rated R.
It's a mismatch.
But
Yes.
Battle of Five Armies
and
was
Aragorn
rated R.
has chopped off heads and things like that too. It's a different level. But it's not to say that when they make this second age, they don't bring the same level of violence into the series. We might see somebody gorge somebody's eyes out and make their skull explode.
Okay,
We
what?
could. Yeah, we could. That could happen.
Some of
All
the
kinds of bad stuff went down in Numenor. Really bad.
All right, what's your response to some of the reactions on Twitter saying that one of the biggest criticisms of Game of Thrones the last 3 seasons is there actually have been no women in the writers' room, and it's obvious. And so far, every name that we've heard attached to Lord of the Rings, there have been no women creators or writers.
Not to mention that the head of Amazon for genre that just got let go or left, I don't know which it was a woman.
Was a woman. Do you think, and of course Lord of the Rings was great, and it was written by 2 women and produced by, so do you think that they're making some errors of judgment? Because everyone is criticizing Game of Thrones for not including women behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. That's possible.
On these last few seasons that are not fan favorites. And now Lord of the Rings seems to be not engaging as many women as even Lord of the Rings did.
We have yet to see who they're going to staff at Amazon. They did lose a woman in a powerful position, Ms. Iguardo, who left the position of...
she made the deal happen.
She helped make the deal happen with the Tolkien estate for genre show.
And you know
development
how
Amazon.
difficult they can be.
Let's see what happens next. When I look at the credits at the end of Game of Thrones, I see lots and lots and lots of women in high producer positions, and I see a lot of that. But
on Thrones?
Yeah, I've seen a lot.
Okay.
But now here
not in
you
the
go.
writers' room.
In the writers' room, this is where it's particularly important. I would very much be happier with diversified voices in the writers' room at Amazon. I really would.
And you don't just mean women and men.
That's exactly what I mean all kinds of diversification.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was Numenor a diverse society?
No. Numenor was only became diverse spiritually because during the saga of what happened in the kingdom, there were those who stayed faithful to the Valar, and then there were those who started to worship Sauron, including the ugliness of, Aztec pyramid human sacrifice, like an Apocalypto. Yeah, remember that movie?
One of the other tidbits I found reading up on Bryan Cogman, I don't know if you mentioned it, was he went to Juilliard with Lee Pace.
Yes,
we
he did.
mentioned it. Yeah.
So
and Anthony Mackie.
is Thranduil in Arda in the Second Age?
Yes. Thranduil is in the Greenwood. Yeah, probably. I would say yes, probably. Thranduil, the Elven King, probably established his kingdom in Greenwood, in the northern reaches of Greenwood, the Great. Millennia, maybe at some point in time after the first elves awoke on the shores of Cuivienen, and before some of them made the major migration across the mountains, across all of Middle-earth, to go to Valinor. I think there were quite a few who, stayed behind.
Were all of the peoples of Middle-earth in the Second Age divine royalty? I mean, the funny part of the ending of Game of Thrones was that the kid raises his hand and says, "Why don't we have an election? Let's go Democratic." And everyone laughs in his face. It says,
Yeah.
no, what,
Yeah.
what are you thinking?
Silly
Was
Sam with
Middle
his water
Earth,
bottle.
is Middle Earth a land of kings and divine leadership?
Well, divine leadership?
Or did the
mean-
gods ordain certain rulers?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes. All right. I know
It's
that-
not democratic. The second age is not democratic. It's very Thronesian.
Yeah, of course it is. But I mean, the Second Age and all the things that happened in Middle Earth after the downfall of Thangorodrim and the removal of Morgoth from the world, the shattering of all the lands, the changing of the coastline, and ultimately Valinor was still in the world, and the world had not been changed to be completely round yet. We're talking a cataclysm that has yet to happen. By the time you get to the end of the saga of Numenor, and they brazenly go to approach Valinor to claim eternal life, because these men were jealous of the elves having eternal life. So when they go and approach the shores of Valinor, that's when there's a much, much bigger cataclysm, which is like Atlantis-level cataclysm, and the flat earth is made round at that point in the history of Arda. And Valinor, as a continent, is removed physically from the circles of the world. And no, there's nothing democratic about what's going on. There's, pure oligarchy happening in Numenor, the complete running of that nation by a mad king who has been badly duped by Sauron. I guess it's not any surprise that there are some flavors of all that Westerosi stuff that kind of fits into the Numenorian storyline. But we have another person in the chat who said, no way, having a Game of Thrones writer on Tolkien would just ruin it. Well, there's going to be a lot of that conversation in the coming months. We're going to have a lot of that, Chelsea. We're going to have fans of Tolkien who are going to be keenly aware of the difference in tone and the difference in storytelling, and thinking that any of the people from Game of Thrones production would be inappropriate to bring in as writers on the Lord of the Rings project. However, that might not necessarily be a safe assumption. Can you categorically push a writer into a corner because he's worked on Game of Thrones successfully for years and assume that he or she cannot switch gears and take their fandom and their knowledge of Middle-earth and apply it with a very different sensibility? It can happen. It's just as likely as anything. Don't you think? Yeah? Okay, Chelsea, hi. How you doing there?
Hi. I have to shut down when we start talking about women in Hollywood because my thoughts don't need to be heard on these subjects. So I just stay quiet. No, I was like, every single person that brings up this conversation is a man, and I'm tired of it. Mm-hmm. I'm really tired of it. I'm really tired of men forcing women into the problem with the episode is because women weren't in it. How do you know? I'm really tired of this shit. I really am, and I'm really my face is on fire talking about this. I really don't want to talk about it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of that's like a reverse assumption of sexism, isn't it?
Yes.
It's like a total reverse assumption of sexism from the other end working the wrong way. I get that.
Yeah.
I totally get that.
And Ellen
totally
said
get
something in here that Hollywood still has a long way to go when it comes to this stuff, but progress is being made. Yes, a lot of progress is being made. But I also have a lot of issues with a lot of people just jumped in going, yes, we need more diversity in Hollywood. And I saw Aladdin Saturday. So Aladdin comes out this Friday. I'm not allowed to talk about my opinion of it, but I can tell you, even just from the trailers, that there's a lot of concern about who they cast for Aladdin. And Aladdin was a childhood film for me. Mm-hmm. And I walked out of the movie and having this conversation again with people of going, I'm tired of Hollywood casting by skin tone instead of talent. I was like, I would like talent to be a factor along with the diversity. If it means that your casting process takes longer to find the person you want, okay. If you can't find the perfect talent, but somebody was great and they weren't the color that you wanted, Why did it have to be a certain color? Like, we're looking at diversity in the wrong way still, and it's driving me nuts.
I hear you on that, and I appreciate what you're saying on that. Sarah's like, preach. Chelsea, please speak to us. Thank you, Pipsquet. Well, here's the thing. Getting the material right from a Lord of the Rings fan perspective, getting it right means it has to pass muster through the family, and the family who is in bed with Amazon Studios, and that might be the single most important criteria to any of us. Not how many, yellow people or purple people or black people were in the room, how many women were in the room writing. It might be more of a conversation of, is this stuff good enough that the Tolkien family will say, cool, go with it. That's really important. And for everybody who feels threatened by the idea that Bryan Cogman or any Game of Thrones people would be pollinated over to Amazon's work on this new series, you don't have to worry about that because the deal is still the deal that's in place. The family has the right to say, no, you've drafted a script which is BS. It doesn't honor or even fit in with the integrity of these stories. Try it again. Now, Bryan Cogman knows this. He knows this problematic and interesting deal is there. And he's willing to go with his powers of perception and his knowledge of Tolkien and high fantasy in general and apply it. He's willing to apply that knowledge, even with those stakes being at that point where the family has to be pleased before we, the audience, are pleased. I'm comfortable. I'm very comfortable with that setup.
Do you
And
think
anybody else that they want to hire, we're going to scrutinize them as well, because that's what we do. We're going to scrutinize to a degree because I want to know about their nerd cred. I want to know about, how much of a Tolkien fan those people are before they get hired on that job. That's really all that matters to me. Is how much of a
I think
Tolkien
the
fan they are.
OneRing.net should have an exclusive interview that has the same questions for every new hire of how did you get in to Tolkien? I was like, what was your entryway? How old were you? And all those basic questions. That would be a lot of fun, I think.
I agree.
Somebody said in the chat room, and I just want to address it, Chelsea, your opinion always matters. Please speak your mind. We love hearing from you. It's not that I don't think my opinion matters. It's that this is a conversation as an actor in Hollywood that I have to have every single day. And I'm just tired of having it. I don't like having the argument with everybody in Hollywood all day, every day. And I get that it needs to be heard by people outside of LA, but it's literally the only conversation I have now, and I'm tired of it.
Yeah, it is the subject of way too many conversations around here.
Did
That's
Game
true.
of Thrones, the TV show, benefit from George Martin's lack of involvement?
Whoa. Did Game of Thrones benefit from Martin only being tangentially involved?
Yes.
Is that the question?
Yes.
I don't know. They let him write. Every season they let him write an episode.
So is the Tolkien estate flexing too much?
We have yet to see that. We
just lost the creative executive that wanted young Aragorn and made the deal happen.
Yes, we did. The creative executive who was starting the series to work towards an opening of young Aragorn, yes, that actually is a person that they've lost. So now, maybe we can assume that Bryan's influence is, and with the family involved in this conversation, we should maybe take a look at that and think.
Doesn't that give you more pause for concern that we're already losing creative development executives versus a Game of Thrones guy coming in?
No.
I'm sorry. Sarah in the chat room just said if people
No.
need to hear from women, they can pay us. Amen. Oh my God. A truer statement has never been spoken.
That's great. That's really, really good. That's a great repartee. That's excellent repartee. Very, very funny. Okay.
I respect the hell out of everybody in the chat room too, Kristen. Absolutely. I wasn't taking it negatively. I just wanted to vocalize why I just didn't want to talk about that subject anymore.
Indeed.
So we are past 6 o'clock, so we're getting shorter on time. So I'd really love to move on from the Bryan conversation because we've been talking about it for 63 minutes.
And there's a lot of energy in this conversation. But yes, let's move on.
There is. We have some house cleaning things to get to.
We do. We have housekeeping. But keep in mind, everybody, that when other announcements come and we figure out anybody else that's getting involved directly or marginally with this Amazon project, we'll offer more opinions and more scrutiny, for better or for worse. We'll get there when we get there. But in the meantime, this really has been an eyebrow-raising development. And thank you for being with us on this show today as we continue into our next segment.
And I'm on board fully.
I
we know
actually have
Justin.
a question for you, Justin, that you can research right now, too. In the spirit of all things Tolkien, how did the film do this last weekend? I didn't look at box office numbers. Like, what are we at for Tolkien now?
The Tolkien movie, unfortunately, was released at the wrong time against the wrong movies. You have Avengers, John Wick, and Pokemon completely dominating every screen at the theater.
This is true.
It averaged...
Pokemon
but
and John Wick
still in
and
theaters.
It's still in theaters.
To hang on.
It makes $45 a day.
$45
a day.
You mean per theater?
Per
average.
theater.
Okay, I was like total around the world. Like
But
what?
Yeah.
So the per theater average has gone down precipitously. It is unfortunate because the Tolkien film
It's great.
is a great film.
It
It's
is a great film.
beautiful drama and is worth seeing in theaters. I think perhaps as another one of those rare moments when I agree with Justin, the movie might have fared better in the commercial marketplace if it had been
Released
exhibited
in like November.
in November.
Yeah.
Yeah, in October or November. Yeah.
The end of the
That may have
year
been-
when they don't have so many of the blockbusters coming out and it's all about award pushes and artsy films, like
Yep.
would have been great there.
Right before the big Thanksgiving push.
Honestly, that's why Bohemian Rhapsody did so well. It came out in November. It was the best film at the end of last year.
Oh, and we're only a couple of weeks away from Rocket Man being released as well.
Yes, I can't wait to see it. Somebody saw it this weekend, and my friend was brought to tears and said they hope they turn it into a Broadway show.
Then, oh my God. Well, then we've got John Wick, Godzilla, and we have all these huge
and we've got Aladdin coming out this weekend.
Aladdin and all these huge films coming out. So no wonder there's this competition for space in the movie theaters with Tolkien film. I had completely pushed
June.
Dark Phoenix out of my mind.
Which day does it come out? Is it the end of May or June 6th? It's like the first week of June is when Dark Phoenix comes out. Ellen says Tolkien has taken in $3.8 million so far. What was the budget for that film? Do we know?
20.
Oh.
And they thought that it would make $6 million on its opening weekend.
And
but
it only
did
did like 2.2, I think, is what I saw.
Yeah. Oh yeah, in October is Joker.
Oh, yeah?
Joker is being released.
But you saw the despair in Dome's composure last week.
Yes.
It's not his fault. He did right by
It's
Tolkien.
definitely not his fault.
No, it's definitely not.
Which Dome actually had a very fun tweet yesterday at the end of the Game of Thrones finale, or I guess this was Sunday night, saying he was all in about Game of Thrones and was like, I want to create something new. So what Game of Thrones actor should I cast? And give me an interesting story idea for this character to play. And if you want to submit your ideas to Dome on Twitter, he's taking solicitations. And he said the most creative ideas would be rewarded, is what he says.
No, yes, he did want suggestions from people on Twitter.
Yes, he did.
I was reluctant to say something because I was going to come up with some cockamamie, ridiculous thing, and I realized he might not be interested in doing a biography film again. I think he told me that.
Oh no, he said that on the show. He didn't want to do. He wanted to get into something else.
Something else, yeah.
But he said he'd love to do something Lord of the Rings, Tolkien based, telling the fantasy story. He'd love to do that.
Yes.
So maybe. Something fun that I brought today.
Oh, hey,
Yes.
yo, you guys are in for a treat. The queen, the maven of all board games, the maven of gaming is here. Let us not forget that Chelsea runs the fantastic Players Wanted board game experiences that happened at Emerald Knights,
And right here
in
at Scum and
Burbank,
Villainy as well.
And right here on Monday nights here at Scum and Villainy.
And speaking of, this coming Monday, May 27th, is our Middle-earth themed game night, and we're going to have all sorts of Lord of the Rings collectibles, including those. We have a limited edition sideshow medallion from Lord of the Rings. We've got some miniatures.
I'd love one, Andrew. Thank you.
A Hobbit T-shirt, Hobbit soundtracks. We're also giving away some autographed Tolkien posters that were signed by Dome. So if you're in Hollywood on Monday, May 27th, come join us right here at Scum and Villainy Cantina. We're also going to do a special D&D campaign on Monday night, which will be Lord of the Rings themed. We're going to run 2 sessions of it, and you get to play as one of the members of the Fellowship, one of the 7.
Yes, and I am debating whether I'm going to bring the brand new Fantasy Flight games, Journeys in Middle-earth, which is a fantastic, really, really cool dungeon crawl game, which is run by the app. The app
JC
is
might
the
cry
Dungeon
right now.
Master. But then again, I don't want anybody to spill a drink on my new game, so I might bring the original Reiner Knizia board game.
So fun. That one's so
the
fun.
Lord of the Rings Reiner Knizia board game.
Question for you,
From
Cliff.
the year 2000, which is really cool.
If you were going to play Dungeons & Dragons Lord of the Rings and be a member of the Fellowship, of the 7, who would you be?
Tough choice, but I would probably go for either Samwise, he's my favorite character,
Okay.
or I would go for Aragorn, because Aragorn can, as a tank, I mean, I think Gimli and Aragorn are the 2 best tanks for those characters.
Okay.
To actually knock some orc head. You know, it's Aragorn who says, let's hunt some orc. So he's the guy. Yeah. But if I want to do stealth mode, I might do one of the stealthy hobbits instead.
I'm going to be Pippin.
Really?
Yep.
Pippin?
I want to clumsily go fight my way into battle and somehow survive it. That's
I want to clumsily knock a skeleton into the well and
pretty much.
and then not get
And
blamed.
pick up a Palantir and have everyone yell at me. It's fine.
It's too bad. You know, Pippin never got blamed for Gandalf dying, but it was all his fault.
So many people blame him.
Pippin's fault. It's all Pippin's fault.
Poor Pippin. I love
Poor
Pippin.
guy.
Anyway, so what I wanted to show everybody, so speaking of board games,
Oh, please, I gotta see this.
I got sent a game in the mail today. It's a brand new game I hadn't heard of. And this is going to be a treat for everybody that is my generation and older that remembers going to Blockbuster Video. And if you've never been to a Blockbuster, I apologize. This is the board game. It's Blockbuster Party Game.
Hey,
It's
Blockbuster
actually
party game.
designed like a VHS rental that you would get from Blockbuster.
That's hilarious. Open this up.
When you open it up,
Oh, by the way, give shout out to my mom. Hi, how you doing? my stepmom's in the chat. So hi, how you doing, darling?
it actually looks like a VHS tape.
This
It
is
has
so
the
cool.
sticker, "Be kind, please rewind" on it, like
Here,
you used to get
I'm
at
gonna hold this
Blockbuster.
out. I'm gonna hold this. You can take the components out. It looks like an old plastic box from a Blockbuster
So then
VHS.
the
tape.
VHS opens up, and that becomes your board game, the actual board for the game. And then it becomes a Blockbuster parking lot. And there's actually a sign that you put in there. Yeah, with the old Blockbuster logo. It looks just like it used to be a Block. And it's a movie trivia game. You play teams, and you're trying to guess the movies and collect a movie from each genre.
This is so cool.
But just the nostalgia factor. I literally opened this up, and I felt like I was back in my childhood going to Blockbuster. And it like brought back so many memories.
And guess what? Guess what's in here in all these movie cards?
Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Rings is one of the movies you can guess.
The Fellowship of the
So a
Ring.
little tie-in for all of our ringers.
That's so cool. This is a really cool game. I like this. I'm gonna figure out.
Absolutely.
I want to figure out how to play it. We're gonna play this on Monday.
I'm going to bring it on Monday
Okay.
for sure. The buzzer. I have to
Oh,
put
it's a
batteries
buzzer.
on it.
It's a buzzer. I love this. This is so cool. Blockbuster game.
Wasn't the Lord of the Rings on VHS a double tape movie?
Yeah, when the Lord of the Rings
Oh, it
came
would have
out,
had to have
it was
been.
2 VHS tapes.
Do you
Just-
remember
just
where
like
it
Titanic.
split?
Just like Titanic, right? Yeah.
Do you remember where it split?
Well, it also split on the extended DVDs as well. It was over 2 DVDs.
Yeah,
I
but what?
do not know where the VHS decided to split the film.
It was at Galadriel's Gifts, if I recall correctly. Maybe the chat room can correct me.
It happens in Lothlorien on the Blu-ray. On the Blu-ray,
yeah.
on the extended Blu-ray.
That's not
split.
the theatrical split.
Oh man, the theatrical was on 1 disc though.
Not VHS, though.
No, it was on 2 VHS tapes. I don't know. To be quite honest, because of the poor quality of the VHS,
found something you don't
I
know.
never wanted to watch Lord of the Rings on VHS, and I never did.
How dare you?
How dare I?
Yeah, I was past the VHS point for Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
It's like watching mud in your eyes.
Does anyone
It's
in the
like,
chat room have VHS Lord of the Rings?
Well, I will let you know in a second. If anybody did, please let us know. The last 2 VHS tape movie that I owned, I think, was Titanic.
The last VHS tape I owned was a collector's item of...
But a double, like the one that required a split.
Oh! You mean two
Yeah.
two in one?
It required 2 tapes to get the whole movie.
Right.
The whole movie. Ryan Hamilton says Return of the King was split at Grand.
That Grand. Yep, that was
okay.
where it was split on the Blu-ray as well. In Captain Marvel, when she lands in that blockbuster,
Yes.
do you guys remember the one movie that she picks up off the shelf before she leaves the store and we go on with the rest of the movie?
Oh.
Deep nerd Marvel cut here for you.
What is it?
It's a movie that takes 2 tapes. It's a long movie that takes 2
Are you gonna
VHS tapes.
Are you gonna tell us what it is?
I'll let you guess. Anybody else want to guess? What is the one movie that Captain Marvel, when she's there, when Carol is looking at that, and then, strangely enough, she looks at it, she puts it down, and then she leaves. After, I think she shoots the cardboard standee in the front of the store. Right?
Braveheart? I have no idea. What is
No,
this?
it's The Right Stuff.
Oh, that's right.
The Right Stuff. Another improbable space travel movie, but it's The Right Stuff. And she's looking at it. It's a double tape movie, and she puts it right back. Anyways,
I love it.
had to do
We
that.
found somebody in the chat room that had VHS Lord of the Rings, but they said they finally upgraded and got better drink coasters. I also just want, speaking of Captain Marvel, I've decided, so this game is by Big Potato Games. You can get it on Amazon now. But I'm going to take this to Disneyland, and I'm going to have Captain Marvel sign it.
Do that. Do that. Yes, have Captain Marvel sign it. I got to get this. This is really cool.
Right?
This is a really cool looking game.
I'm pretty excited about it.
The last VHS tape that I had as a collector's item was The Little Mermaid that had the original plastic clamshell case.
Oh, yeah.
Because there was
Those
a large...
all the Disney old, like, bubble cases they used to have.
Yeah, the
That
old
was
bubble
so
cases.
weird.
But that was the one that had the large penis in the castle behind Ursula and King Triton.
Speaking of the original
There was
Renaissance
a large
stuff.
gold weenus painted into the castle of King Triton's castle, and that was such a scandal
Such
for
a
Disney
scandal.
Home Video.
Such a scandal.
And I kept it for a long
And then right
time.
after Little Mermaid, we had Aladdin, where the original lyric, and I still have my original soundtrack for Aladdin on cassette tape, where the original lyric in Arabian Nights is, where they cut off your ears if they don't like your face. It's barbaric.
But hey, it's home.
And then they
Yes.
changed it
They cut that.
within weeks to where it's flat and immense and the heat is intense. It's barbaric, but hey, it's home.
The last
nearly
VHS
as
I
good.
owned was The Point. And no one recognizes the reference.
No one knows that reference, the point.
Where's Captain America? He might get that
It
reference.
was Harry Nilsson and Ringo Starr and John Lennon made an animated film.
Okay.
And John Lennon sings all the songs. And it's a little guy with a pointy head, and it's called The Point.
That's funny. Okay, fine.
It's
fine,
not a
fine.
joke. It's a real movie. Look it up.
Hey,
Yeah, I can't remember the last VHS I actually bought. That I have no idea.
hey.
Probably a Disney movie.
Okay, whatever. I'm not even going to acknowledge that because that's just beneath all of us. I'm not going to acknowledge that guy who's in the Facebook chat because it's just beneath. That's beneath me.
You're acknowledging him by saying that right now.
No one knows who I'm talking about. I'm just not even going to acknowledge that. You know, bye-bye. Bye, Felicia. That's all I'm going to say.
Jed Brophy just tweeted.
What did Jed Brophy just tweet?
He says, actually, I think it is in good hands. Quietly excited for what brilliance can be wrought here, as long as they don't delve into the dwarves delving far too deep in the mines of Moria.
We're going to eventually get to the part where the dwarves dig too greedily and too deep. It has to happen.
Not in this show if it's Second Age.
No,
But we might see them pop out of a hole in the ground.
That's why I
pretty
wanted
exciting.
young Aragorn. I still want young Aragorn. I want to see the dwarves reclaim Moria. I wanted to see everything.
wait a minute. Can't you imagine? I know Chelsea can imagine that one season might be trapped in one frame of time. Another season might be hundreds of years further in the future. I've talked about that for months. You guys need to get this idea in your brains. An anthology series, season by season, where Middle-earth is covered in a wildly different swath of time.
Yep.
That's where we're headed. I'm telling you,
and still,
I'm
in
predicting
the second
it.
age
That's where we're headed.
is when we first create a lot of these like species and see them like I think the creation of the first existence of the dwarves could be just as exciting as everything else.
Well, that happened before the First Age.
Yes, but there's a lot of stuff that we can get back to and in flashbacks and stuff that they can touch on, like especially if they're going to talk about Numenor and there's so much great history to get into.
There is a lot of juicy stuff.
As we wrap up, I just want to say with season 8, does shooting in Scotland and Ireland give you confidence after watching season 8 of Game of Thrones?
Well, most of Game
I've
of Thrones
always had the confidence for Scotland and Ireland. I've never been on the fence about that one. Which reminds me, there was a chat room comment way at the top of the show that I wanted to get to about somebody mentioning Outlander and related to the Game of Thrones, which Outlander films in Scotland as well.
That's right.
Which seeing Tobias Menzies in the finale of Game of Thrones really threw me off. I went, why is Black Jack Randall at the council meeting right now?
Yeah. I mean, wait. I thought that Game of Thrones was mostly filmed in...
It was everywhere. They had Croatia, they had Iceland.
And Iceland and Ireland, but I don't think that Game of Thrones was filmed in Scotland, was it?
I don't...
Outlander is.
But
Outlander
yes, Outlander is.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I'm a New Zealand hardcore fan, and I would prefer...
New Zealand?
I would prefer all the outdoor stuff to be filmed in New Zealand. I really
think
would.
Scotland's got some very gorgeous countryside. There's literally Outlander has existed in multiple timelines: modern day America, 1700s America, old Scotland, Paris, France. All of it filmed in Scotland, and all of it looking exactly like it should. Like they found old plantation homes in Scotland. There is such amazing country and architecture to play with there that it's just as vast and beautiful as New Zealand.
Then I need to be educated, and I rely on you, Chelsea. I'm relying on you to womansplain to me.
Knock me off the stool.
I'm terrible. I'm so terrible. Oh, knock you off again. I am seriously, all jokes aside, I don't know because I've never been to Scotland. I've been to England, and I've been to New Zealand many times. But the Scottish countryside is something that I think I've only seen once or twice in a couple of films. Obviously Braveheart, blah 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 blah. But I mean, I'm the guy who's still going to say,
as we wrap up,
let's shoot in New Zealand.
Final question, based on the news today. Final question: do you guys recommend Lord of the Rings fans start watching Game of Thrones?
If you haven't watched Game of Thrones at all?
Yeah.
I mean, I would still tell people to watch the series. It's a great series, even if the last 4 hours of it's a little disappointing.
I will unreservedly recommend any fantasy fan dig into something as culturally significant as Game of Thrones, regardless of conventional wisdom about the success or lack of success of the final season. You still can't ignore it. It is it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. So it's worth it. It's worth it to explore the series. At least we as Tolkien fans will be able to compare. There will be lots of comparison drops. As soon as Amazon Studios gets their new Middle-earth series going, it is inevitable that the press, especially the poorly educated journalists who are just out there writing some crappy clickbait article, there's going to be nothing but drop comparisons to Game of Thrones. So as much as we, hardcore fans, want to differentiate the writing and the tone and the style of Tolkien as being really fundamentally different from George Martin, yeah, that's fine. It doesn't matter. When the show comes out, everybody's going to start saying, well, they're doing things that Game of Thrones did. Or they're not doing things that Game of Thrones did. That's going to happen a lot.
So, Cliff, yes or no? Should they watch it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
So that's two yeses.
Yes. Yes.
So we've got a couple of minutes. I want to thank everybody from the bottom of our hearts. Kristen, I love that you said this is hands down your favorite live stream chat in the entire universe. That means a lot to us.
Oh, hello. You know what? Hands down, you are my favorite audience member and I've been doing this show live for 7 years. Thank you for joining us and being so generous.
Yes. And thank you so much for week after week.
Thank
And
you.
to our newbies, please come back next week. If you don't already subscribe and follow to the One Ring Net, do so on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you prefer. Like, this video is live on Twitch, on Facebook, on YouTube, whenever we're doing it on Periscope, Twitter.
Live on. It's
Yep.
live on this, on that. It's live everywhere.
Wherever you can find it, we're there. And if you personally during the week want to keep having nerdy discussions with us, you can follow me at Uncool Rockstar, where I talk about all the nerdy things, including my Disney love. Like, I'm
Yep.
Princess Jasmine today. I do a lot of like Disney bounds and stuff like that. And thank you to Her Universe for this amazing romper, because I'm in love with it. But Uncool Rockstar, anywhere on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever you do.
Yeah.
And where can they find you?
Well, you can find me on Instagram and on Twitter at Quick Beam. That's beam of wood, not beam of light. Quick Beam 2000. Okay. Follow me, and I'm going to extol the virtues of Miyazaki until I'm blue in the face.
And Dark Crystal.
Yes, thank you. We'll talk Skeksis and Gelfling all day.
Right as I said that, the chat room said, watch Dark Crystal.
Yes, watch. Oh, and also, I want to say, Brian, in the chat room, yes, if you guys have never seen John Borman take on the Arthurian legend, watch Excalibur. We're talking really young, hot Helen Mirren, really, really brilliant Nicole Williamson as the wizard Merlin. Unbelievable actors, very young Liam Neeson and Patrick Stewart in their very first feature film roles. Check out John Borman's Excalibur. I'm glad you mentioned it. It's worth it. I mean, as far as, high fantasy.
And while we're
that's
telling
one of the
people to
best.
check
It's
things
one of the
out,
best.
I do want to say from earlier, it might have sounded like I was disappointed with Aladdin. I was very happy with the results of Aladdin. That's all I'm allowed to say. It comes out this weekend, and you should go see it.
Breaking your non-disclosure agreement.
No, that much I'm allowed to say.
You're allowed to say that you like it.
I'm
Really?
allowed to say yes or no, but I can't go into specifics.
Okay, all right. As far as
Until 6 a.m. tomorrow when my podcast goes up.
we're almost done, but we're not quite done. We have just a few minutes. Justin, bear with us. I want to give a big acknowledgement to all the hardworking staff at Scum and Villainy Cantina. Can we have a round of applause, please? For
Squid and Josh working tonight, working
Yes.
hard behind us.
Thank you, all the denizens of the deep, dark wood here at Scum and Villainy.
Tip your bartenders.
Yeah, tip your bartenders. I cannot believe that the Game of Thrones skin is all gone now.
I know.
The Westerosi experience
I
was
can't
really
wait to
quite
see what we
something.
do next in this space.
Wowzer, yeah, that's for sure. And do you know what else is going on?
Well, people are fighting for your attention in the chat room. That's
What?
what's going
Really?
on now.
Oh,
That you've started a popularity contest.
No, Kay, you're my favorite, Pipskay. You know you're my favorite.
Now you're changing
Okay,
stories.
Ellen, you're my favorite. Ellen, you're my favorite. Ellen. Okay, now I'm not going to say goodnight. Wait a minute. We have one more thing to say.
Say goodnight, Justin.
Follow us at The One Ring Net on Facebook, on Twitter, and all those other things, because we're going to bring you more news and more scoop. There's, whether it's true or not, my
Amen.
my spidey sense is tingling. There's going to be some bigger announcement that we're anticipating.
I think it's going to keep coming almost every week for the next few weeks.
There's going to be more stuff about the showrunners, the actual staff, the writers that they're bringing in at Amazon Studios. And God willing and the creek don't rise, we're going to get an interview with those people live right here. You can come and join us next Tuesday at 5 o'clock at Scum and Villainy. My name is Clifford Broadway.
Or on Monday night, come join us at Scum and Villainy for Lord of the Rings game night as well. We'll be here Monday and Tuesday. Come join us.
Chelsea Schwartz, ladies and gentlemen, yay!
And everybody,
Chelsea.
give it up for Cliff.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you to our live audience today. We hope
guys
you
are
enjoyed Kevin
awesome.
after us.
Well, you guys are way awesome. We actually have a live audience. Good night, everybody. Buenos noches y buena suerte.